Right, absolutely. The breakfast diary at Deniba 99.1 FM this Thursday morning. We're saying a very good morning to you, wherever it is you are listening to us from. It's another day for us to talk Nigeria, make sense of all of the happenings in and around it. Prepare review right here on the station. A warm welcome to you. My name is Njidanka Chisem Chinedu, co-anchor is here. Our analyst, comrade Aloysius Sata, is away for today. So we will do it alone as we usually do it sometimes. Before we begin the paper review, a quick reminder. On top of the hour, we are going to be dealing with an important topic as usual. And it's focused on revitalizing national values. FG's plan to unveil a national value charter. Revitalizing national values, FG's plan to unveil a national value charter. The DG of the National Orientation Agency has a plan as regards that, and we want to ask what values is it talking about. So we'll get to discourse about it after the hour of 10. Before then, let's begin with the first paper today.
The Guardian newspaper, the headline, Tension in Kano over Gobard verdict as Akeredolu Ayedatiwa crisis rocks Ondo. Tension in Kano over Gaba verdict as Akeredolu Ayedatiwa crisis rocks Ondo. The riders here, heavily armed security operatives disperse angry protesters. Appeal court, APC blame clerical error for controversy over judgment. NNPP asks National Judicial Council to investigate ruling over against Yusuf. Cross River Governor Otu wins appeal as Honor heads to Supreme Court. The police commander in Kano yesterday foiled an attempt by some youth to perpetrate violence at the city center. The youth were reportedly protesting November 17 Court of Appeal judgment that ordered the removal of Umar Kabir Yusuf as governor of the state. In their hundreds, the protesters had begun a procession from the Kofardan Agundi area along BUK and advanced towards the Gidam Murtala area before they were dispersed by heavily armed security men. And of course, according to eyewitness, the police used tear gas canisters to dislodge the angry youth who set up several bonfires on the major road. Speaking of which, bonfires are not even good for tarred roads. It is unhealthy, can lead to the damage of the road. I presume the young people were angry over the judgment, and two things here. Are these actual youth protesting, or some people bought to, put up a protest? At the end of the day, for me, it would be, to what end is this protest going to? What exactly do they intend to achieve with it? I mean, this is not going to be the first time that young people troop out in their numbers to protest in this country. NSAS protests are one of the most massive protests ever by young people. And the big question is, at the end of the day, the demands of the young people, are they met? And how rational are they too, if you ask me? I mean, this thing about who the governor of Kano State eventually becomes is a legal matter. Protests cannot change what the court has made unless a court of higher jurisdiction does that. And I think that is the only hope left for the people of Kano.
I think it just underscores the point that there is a limit to which people can tolerate things. And so when you ask, are they sponsored, are they genuine protesters? For me, it's neither here nor there. Whether they are protesting on behalf of some persons, it just goes to show that those people can no longer tolerate whatever they perceive as injustice as far as Kano State is concerned. I think we have been monitoring what is going on there. The fact that, at the first instance, there was some sort of piece of a graveyard. The first time the tribunal gave its ruling, and then the appeal court gave its ruling, piece of a graveyard. And when I say there's a limit, anybody can tolerate things, I think is dependent on the latest information coming from Kano State. The fact that there seems to be contradiction in the report of the appeal court. And I think that's where people think the injustice is too much. First of all, we also have to go back that this is emotionally invested election of some sort, because it has to do with popularity contest. The fact that you had Kwankwaso and his movement benefiting from this wind of change that came with the 2023 election. And so this wind of change was not just about Labour Party, it was also about the NMPP and what it was able to do in Kano State. I mean, look at all of the seats they won, not just in the State Assembly, but the governorship seat as well, House of Representatives, Senate seats as well. And so there was this anticipation that this state now belongs to NMPP. And so the motion had always been arrived. And that's why even during the tribunal hearing, the court of first instance, the judges had to sit virtually because a number of persons were already anticipating, oh, where is this court case going? If it doesn't go our way, this is what is going to happen, all right? But incidentally, things went the way it went. And then appeal court actually made things a bit more difficult for people. And when you look at what is going on, and of course the ruling that came with it, it was still controversial. And that's why there is still this tension. Like I said, there was emotion attached to it. And when you look at the ruling that came on Friday, you would see that there was this kind of peace accord. I mean, there's always peace accord before election. But because of the emotion invested in it, there was another peace accord, just to show you that people are really invested in it because they believe that this thing can actually go either way. And when you look at the comment of, I think, the deputy governor some time ago, that they were not going to tolerate any perceived injustice, that was why people's emotion even rose further. And incidentally, some of the rulings of the court has not favored the NMPP candidate during the election in the person of the governor. So things have really worsened for them. I think it could have been more manageable if we were dealing with the appeal court judgment on his own merit. Because, I mean, look at the case here. The governor was not validly nominated by the party, similar to what you have in Plateau State, where we were told the party did not rightly sponsor the PDP governor there because, well, they did not conduct Congress. In the case of Kano, they said his name is not even in the NMPP register. And so you can't build something on nothing. And I know we had been monitoring some of the rulings of the court up to the Supreme Court, to the extent that the Supreme Court has ruled that, well, if you're not a member or if you're not an aspirant in a party, you cannot challenge the process of which somebody emerged winner. And from what you have seen in Plateau, from what you have seen in Kano, it would seem that there's another variation of nomination in terms of sponsorship. The court are actually saying when it comes to sponsorship of a party, somebody else can challenge it. It's not equivalent to the one where, the court says an aspirant is the sole person that can actually challenge it.
So that person has to come from within the party.
Yeah, and so, but with these rulings now, it seems the courts are singing another tune. But like I said, it could have been quite easy because we are hoping for the Supreme Court to also say something as regards that. And so the anticipation was Supreme Court going to say, well, I have ruled on this thing, and so you shouldn't waste my time again, because we had a similar statement when it was presiding over presidential election petition, when I think one of those parties came up with it, and the Supreme Court said, we have ruled something in relation to nomination, you shouldn't waste our time. So we were hoping that maybe the Supreme Court can say something as regards that, and so there was quite a hope in that regard. If you look at the other reason upon which the judgment was invalidated, or the election victory was invalidated, it has to do with the votes themselves. The fact that 165,000 ballot papers were not stamped, were not sealed, were not signed by INEC. And I remember the time we talked about this tribunal issue, the first time tribunal ruled on it, and I made the point that there are circumstances that encourage whoever that is presiding, maybe the returning officer or the presiding officer, can actually overlook any lapse if they think that some of these lapses do not materialize to anything. And so if a ballot paper was not signed and some ballot papers were not signed, they can actually give it a go ahead and count it as part of the scores of a particular candidate. But a situation where the appeal court goes ahead and invalidates a particular victory because the ballot papers were not stamped, it begs the question: what was brought before the court? What was the argument brought before the court? Did the party concerned, in this case NMPP, make reference to that particular electoral act that gives permission for certain decisions of returning officer or the presiding officer to be recognized, and so it was not even fit to be brought before the court. And so we were waiting for the Supreme Court to also say something as regards that, but I guess it has been compounded with this latest one, the semi-contradiction when it comes to what the court deposed or deposited in its final certified true copy of the judgment. I know yesterday off mic, Comrade was saying something in regards, well, the chief registrar will have to come and clarify, the chief registrar of the appeal court. And indeed, the chief registrar came out yesterday to clarify, saying it was a clerical error, meaning that there was some sort of typographical error. For some persons, well, that was too much an error to be called a typographical error, because when you look at what former chairman of the Human Rights Commission, Chidodin Kalu, he said typographical error is something when there is a misspelling of some sort, simple misspelling. He was using a case of maybe you want to write wife and you write wives. You call all the parties, oh, well, look at what you wanted to write. It was actually wife and we wrote wife, so let's change it. Everybody agrees on it. That's a simple typographical error. But when you begin to look at a whole statement, another statement contradicting the previous statement, he thinks that it's something deliberate. Perhaps this court judges had deliberated on something, agreed on something, and that thing they agreed on is the fact that NMPP candidate in election, who is the governor of Kano State, was the rightful winner. But because allegedly they had been compromised and they decided to change the result. And NMPP is also singing similar tune, that the judges deliberated on something, and when they wanted to change it, they forgot to, remove the original statement. And so you begin to look at some of these things and begin to question the judiciary. For those who are questioning the judiciary, I'm just an onlooker and trying to make sense of what is going on. But for someone like Odin Kanu, he says the judiciary is crook. And this is one of those reasons when you say the judiciary is crook. This is not a typographical error. It was something quite deliberate. But the appeal court has come out to clarify. How tenable it will be is another matter altogether, because I had anticipated that perhaps this could actually boost the chances of NMPP in the Supreme Court. But I also realized that when it comes to bringing your case before a court, I mean, like we saw during the presidential election, it was quite difficult for someone to bring another line of argument, a new line of argument outside the arguments they had presented in the lower court. And so is it going to be one of those instances where they would be told this is not an evidence of a faulty judgment or corrupt judgment because they did not table it during the court of first instance and subsequently at the appeal court? But I know that as circumstances upon which the judiciary can actually change its verdict, and you have to really prove that the time you wanted to prove your case, there was some sort of stumbling block, or you come up with something maybe out of this word that is quite tenable. But then again, we just wait and see how all of those things unfold and how it will be argued. before the Supreme Court. I think this recent controversy has complicated things, but how